The Astana Opera Theater is hosting a special premiere. Connoisseurs of Kazakh opera art know this opera perfectly well. This wonderful masterpiece was written more than half a century ago, but so are numerous other outstanding Kazakh operas. However, what makes the action unfolding at the stage of the main hall today so special? It is the opera Aysulu. What makes it unique among its kind is that it is the first and so far the only comedy in the gallery of Kazakh opera works. Comedy always has a light-hearted, understandable plot that brings a smile, awakens warm feelings, and leaves a pleasant aftertaste. The stage of Astana Opera Theater hosts many comic operas, but the crowd seem to be watching Aysulu comedy with a bit more sparkle in their eyes. This is due to the fact that the plot's flips and turns are so familiar that they bring something personal from the depth of their minds, memories of their youth or the youth of their parents and grandparents. The action of the opera Aysulu takes place around 1960s in Almaty.
It's a journey down the memory lane. This is the Soviet era. Almaty is a favorite city. People who lived in Almaty at those times will probably feel it more deeply. We tried to create the atmosphere in different ways, and I hope we succeeded. Of course, it's up to the people to decide that. The audience always gives the most honest assessment.
Это наша своя казахская опера.
Aysulu Opera is a Kazakh original opera. It is the only comic opera in the history of Kazakh composers, so it was very interesting. Moreover, it has a special atmosphere. These dresses, interesting hairstyles, just like we saw them on our parents' photos. And if I'm not mistaken, I think some apartments from the Soviet era still exist. It's amazing that I get to experience some things that our parents did, how they lived, breathed in the atmosphere of this city, those times. It's as if I'm able to travel back to the times of my parents' youth.
Как будто в молодость своих родителей попали. Такое ощущение.
It is interesting that not only the audience but also the huge team of people who worked on the production perceive Aysulu Opera with a little more sparkle in their eyes. The task was unusual for everyone: the stage director, musicians, singers, and of course, stage designers.
Последние годы в основном
In recent years, we have mainly worked on historical productions, national operas of both Kazakh and Western origin. Compared to all others, this opera is quite modern, even though it's set in the 60s. And this can be noticed through the stage design, but mainly through costumes, hairstyles, and makeup that correspond to that era. In addition to the costumes, there are also handbags, shoes, and various accessories, so naturally we remembered the opera well. The entire process felt different, from brainstorming ideas and sketching to realization, even from the technical side.
технически.
Важно было для нас передать атмосферу, дух.
It was important for us to convey the atmosphere, the spirit of the era, to show the relations between people and convey the character of the time. Scenography needs to demonstrate all this on the stage. For example, some peculiarities of everyday life, but it's important not to give a descriptive characterization of everyday life and not to illustrate the opera itself.
Бытоописательную характеристику, не иллюстрируя произведение.
It was undoubtedly possible to recreate the necessary atmosphere on stage. Excellent lighting and beautiful design were remarkable throughout the entire show. There were numerous details, realistic snippets of city and rural life, and everything was planned with professionalism and, above all, love.
Я сама очень люблю эпоху.
Whether it was in the Soviet Union or the West, I personally really enjoyed the 1960s. In the Soviet Union, it was socialist realism, and I suppose that everything was focused on comfort, conservatism, and convenience. The color palette was also rather modest.
И в цветовой гамме это было достаточно сдержанно.
Ну, задумки наши, в принципе...
Overall, almost all our ideas on scenography were included in the opera, and there were a lot of changes along the way. And according to the director's vision, the locations, scenes, and whole pictures transformed during the process. Originally, we had the famous Almaty market, the Green Bazaar. The action started in there. Then it changed to the train station Almaty 2. Then it became the platform on the station. We actually showed the arrival of the train. The station turned out to be so authentic.
Прибытие поезда показали. Да, вокзал получился просто аутентично.
In this version of the story about Aysulu, the action starts at the train station. Serke, one of the primary protagonists, arrives in the city with a cherished dream to pursue higher education. But he is troubled deep within his soul. The pursuit of his dream may result in the loss of his beloved Aysulu, who stayed in the collective farm. She is a person of character, a leader of labor, a clever and beautiful girl with a long list of admirers. Serke's quest to realize his dream and keep his love will turn into a huge tangle of peculiar misunderstandings that will involve many characters. However, eventually, everything goes well. The story has a happy ending and even a triple wedding.
Опера Айслу легкая.
Aysulu opera is simple and, in my opinion, entirely understandable to all audience members, because the action unfolds in the last century and takes place in Soviet Kazakhstan against the backdrop of the rise of virgin territories. So there are characters such as a tractor driver, a policeman, a collective farm chairman. I think the opera finale will undoubtedly make a lot of people feel good. The audience will leave the play with an elevated mood.
С приподнятым настроением.
The opera Aysulu is a story centered on youth, youthful maximalism, self-discovery, and of course, the pursuit of love. These themes are understandable and close to everyone. Additionally, this story became significantly sweeter, lighter, and in some places even more festive through humor, sincerity, and national flavor. It's also very rich in the main and secondary characters' actions.
Очень много событий.
The opera includes a lot of events, even series of events, as we say. And as directors, we especially seek those events, so we need to find them in the smallest details. It's a difficult task, especially in comedy genre. For example, in a tragic play, a soloist sings an aria for 5 minutes and nothing may happen there. There are just a few actions: sitting, standing up, lying down, crying, right? While in a comedy, there are 100 tasks that must be done during those 5 minutes.
Должны успеть.
The artists also felt the variety of tasks, energy, and dynamics of the production. In a sense, these are the unique challenges of comic opera, and much more so of modern opera. But highly professional singers overcame these difficulties with dignity, which was of course completely unnoticed by the audience.
То, что лестница, туда надо еще.
Before the aria, I had to come up on stage on time for that. And this involved a lot of stairs. You have to go up, then down, then back up again, which is not very convenient for the vocalist. The breathing accelerates and may cause difficulties. Before you sing, you must somehow collect yourself and count your breath.
Перед пением. Вот такая сложность была, и то, что мы...
That was really challenging. We had to go up to the second floor in the first act too. The breathing speeds up, and you need to be sure to do many things and to prepare for the performance. There are a lot more tasks in comic operas than, say, in dramatic operas, and that's what makes them more difficult.
Много задач. В этом и есть сложность комической оперы. Опера хотя комическое...
Although this is a comic opera, Aysulu's image is more serious. She is a serious and honest girl with a character. She's still the leader of her harvesters. That's what Aysulu's character is like.
И правдивая, вот такой характер у нее получилось.
The music editor for the staging of Aysulu in the Astana Opera Theater was Abzal Muhiddin, a people's artist of Kazakhstan. He also confirms that the comedy genre is the most demanding.
Иногда, к сожалению, в классической опере
Unfortunately, there is occasionally an imbalance in classical opera because the music is so self-sufficient that it sort of takes over. The plot might become unclear, and the audience may miss some things. In comic opera, understanding the plot is the main goal. In other words, the audience must constantly follow the plot because it moves so quickly.
сюжет развивается очень быстро.
The opera Aysulu was written by Sadık Muhamedjanov, an outstanding composer and a Kazakh music classic of the last century. His Aysulu has been touching the hearts of audiences for 60 years and inspiring many stage directors to experiment. At least 10 interpretations have appeared since the original version was written. One theater director even managed to move the opera's setting to the beginning of the 21st century. Naturally, Aysulu's premiere at the Astana Opera Theater is also an interpretation to some degree. But it is not an attempt to deviate from the original in order to express one's own vision. It's rather an attempt to imagine how the author's voice might sound today.
Дело в том, что материалы...
Unfortunately, the thing is that the musical materials of this opera were lost. When I talked to the librarian, the curator of the Abay Opera Theater in Almaty, he said that these notes had been transferred to the theater of the young viewer. Either there was a fire or these notes were left underwater, but the bottom line was that the notes were lost. We had to restore everything.
Это шла музыка раньше, они утеряны. И мы...
First of all, we restored the clavier piece by piece. The next stage was even more difficult. We had to restore the score. Some pieces that were never performed had to be orchestrated.
Еще сложнее, нужно было восстановить партитуру.
And last night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I completed the last orchestration. You'll be listening to it tonight. This is the very finale of the opera.
Часа ночи. Вот, это самый финал, который вы сегодня будете слушать.
The Aysulu opera premiere at the Astana Opera Theater gathered a full house. Abzal Muhiddin had no doubt that this would be the case. During the preparation, he was already thinking about the fate of their work after the premiere.
В этой постановке я...
In this production, I tried to simplify the orchestration as much as possible, and I think this will make this opera more mobile in the future. That is, we will be able to go on tours and perform in other theaters. And since I have removed rare instruments from the score, it will be possible to perform not only in theaters, but also in philharmonics.
Я убрал из партитуры редкие инструменты.
Sadık Muhamedjanov was a unique composer. He was so productive that his artistic legacy is still being studied and comprehended. He was undoubtedly a founding member of the country's composers' school. Sadık Muhamedjanov was a talented, daring person who was always in search for more creative ideas. Apart from the first Kazakh comic opera, he also created the first Kazakh oratorio and the genre of concerto for voice and orchestra in Kazakh music. The Astana Opera Theater decided to pay tribute to the memory and creativity of this brilliant composer and chose Aysulu Opera for this purpose. It seems to have been a great choice.